We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I'm going to be talking about why watch YouTubers love to talk about Grand Seiko. That's right, Grand Seiko. Now, it's fair to say that in the past, the brand Grand Seiko has been placed under a lot of scrutiny by people that have been collecting watches for a very long time. In the watch industry, there exists different levels of pretentiousness, but not only that, certain brand preference. So I'm not calling anyone necessarily that looks down upon Grand Seiko pretentious, but perhaps it is time to look at Grand Seiko as much more of a serious luxury watch brand. I'm going to cover that later in the video, as well as I will talk about some very interesting things that the brand has done, as well as why watch YouTubers like myself like to talk about the brand and specifically some of the models more frequently in recent times and certainly going into the future. But please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it, as well as you can check out delraywatch.com, where we have so many great, awesome watches. We've just doubled down. The economy is taking a bit of a tank, but not us here at Delray Watch. We've never had more watches than we do currently, and actually I don't think that we have any Grand Seiko because they move pretty quickly and for valid reasons. So first of all, Grand Seiko. Why are people talking about it? Now, I've seen in my comments people say, oh, you must be getting paid by Grand Seiko, this and that. Here's the thing, I'm not getting paid by Grand Seiko, and I don't think that myself or anyone else even really needs to, because they really do have a lot of great qualities about the watches. So in recent times, the brand has gone through so many different changes, right? When you think about watches, you think about just powerhouse brands that have been around for a long time, right? Holy Trinity, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, as well as so many other old brands, including JLC, a lot of Richemont brands, and brands across the board. We all know them. A lot of us love them. Some of us, maybe not so much, certain brands that I mentioned. But nonetheless, these are brands that have models that have sometimes carried out a long time, 100 years, or even the styling of the watches for much more than that. And so when you think about luxury watches, very little has changed. But in recent times, in my opinion, I attribute this to the advent of micro brands and affordably priced watches that do deliver a lot of value. They've forced and kind of caused some brands to start developing and innovating, but I do not see any other brand that is a major brand, and I do consider Grand Seiko a major brand because they are part of Seiko, which is huge. I do not see any other brands or manufacturers that are innovating and adapting and changing not only as quickly but as much as Grand Seiko. Even in recent times, the brand Grand Seiko has been changing their website almost every day. I have been kind of monitoring this, and you go to the Grand Seiko website, and not only does it look great today, it looks even better tomorrow. And this is both them just improving the design as well as probably A/B testing and see what works the best for those shopping on their website, but also their models. Now, I'll talk about that later, but what I really think is such a core component of why Grand Seiko is attracting so many watch YouTubers as well as collectors is that unlike other brands that focus around models, right? Rolex focuses on Daytona, Submariner, Omega focuses on Seamaster, Speedmaster, Patek Philippe focuses on Calatrava. What Grand Seiko does is something that I do not see any other brands doing, and it's so smart for a long-term watch collector play, is that they focus on their movements. Not only do they do a great job producing and manufacturing the movements, their entire brand revolves around the movement. So sure, other manufacturers do really great jobs with their movements, right? That's something you need to do in watches, but what they do is they build watches on top of their movements instead of other brands that design watches and put movements in them. Let me give you an example. When you go to the Grand Seiko website and you scroll down, what you see is that they put in your face the movements, and they have it broken down into three families of movements. Really, they have the 9S, which is the mechanical movements. They have the 9F, which is the quartz movements, and they have the 9R, which is the spring drive movements. Now, there are variations and variants on those movements, but something important to notice is that when you click and you go in their website and you look at their movements, they have so many different variations of the movements and different versions of the movements. That's something that you see as one of the core values of Grand Seiko and also Seiko is the continuous improvement. And that's something that you see a lot coming out of Japan, especially with lean manufacturing, and something that even Toyota had pioneered in the past. Maybe not so much in recent times because auto manufacturing is a little bit different, a little less nimble compared to something like in the luxury goods industry where there's not so many regulations. Grand Seiko improves their movements, it seems like almost every few months. Now, I might be exaggerating, but that's at least how I'm perceiving that, right? And in luxury, perception is a large component of a brand and their watches. So they break down and they go very in-depth, in detail, everything about the movements, how they improve them, and that's something you don't see from a lot of brands. It's becoming increasingly more popular because watch collectors are really starting to be focused on, and in the past it was just a luxury item, but hey, we treat watches as a hobby, and Grand Seiko really does understand that. And so when you consider that the core focus is the movements and everything else is built around it, what you have is you have a very quick and nimble brand that, by the way, also has very attractive imagery and content, which helps us as watch collectors really kind of develop a relationship, almost a digital relationship with the brand that allows us to kind of touch base every so often and really know where the brand stands with us. Whereas some brands, it's, oh, we got this model that appeals to this guy, this model that appeals to this guy. Movements appeal to all watch collectors. And so that's something that I really do need to kind of reinforce. But when we look at that kind of philosophy and when we consider that they just come out with new models all the time, it's something new, it's something interesting, it's innovative, right? I mean, we're thinking with this whole Baselworld cancel, all the other watch fairs are being canceled. What's Rolex going to release? What's Omega going to release? What's this brand going to release? Who knows? But what Grand Seiko is going to release is something new almost every few weeks, and you see it on Hodinkee, you see it on other watch blogs, you see it on Watch Pro. Go to their website, they have a new limited release every week. And I think that is so smart because here's what they do. They come out with limited release watches or limited productions, sometimes in Japan first to test the market if it's particularly kind of cutting edge or innovative or something that they're not known for doing, right? Like a dial swap is one thing, but a hand engraved dial, like we have the, I'll talk about it next, but there's a specific model that's hand engraved. When they do stuff like that, they test out the market. They put an interesting feature in there, and then they want to see how many are sold. What is the kind of the perception? How well is that watch received? And then if it's received very well, they put it into production models across the world. And it's so smart, it's so nimble, and allows them to adapt and deliver the customer exactly what they want. And isn't that what a business should do, let alone a watch brand? I really appreciate that. To give you an example, the types of dials that are in the Seasons collection that is now incredibly popular, most people, including Grand Seiko fans, really do love them, at least one of the pieces out of the entire collection. Maybe a pink dial is not for you, but the blue dial is beautiful, or the green dial. So that's something that I think appeals to so many different people. And those dial styles are not unique for the Seasons collection. The pattern has been used in the past for Japan limited releases, and they did very well, and the prices went up secondhand, and you couldn't find them. Now they're very difficult to find. And so they took that similar dial, they made a Seasons collection, they put some branding, some imagery behind it, and now those watches are so desirable, so in demand, so many people are willing to talk about them for free because they are so interesting, they are so new, they are so novel, and people genuinely like them, right? When I talk about something, I want to talk about something that not only I like, but I can share with you in the idea that you also would enjoy it. And that's what YouTube is all about. And so when we look at some specific watch examples, I think that this strategy is perfectly exemplified, and we can support it by talking about a few models. So first we have the SBGN line with the 9F quartz movement. Now, there are going to be some die-hard watch collectors out there that'll say, oh, that's quartz, that's not for me. Here's the thing, Grand Seiko actually does, once again, put a lot of continual incremental improvements into their movements, including the quartz lineup. To give you an example, this quartz movement can be regulated with a screw. So when you talk about a lot of quartz movements, setting aside super quartz and thermoregulated quartz movements, which can allow, some corrections when we're talking about heat changes and the temperature and that actually affecting how that movement is performing, you can actually manually regulate with the screw on the 9F movements, the recent 9F movements. So you don't really need to ship out a stock movement and that's it. You know, the person theoretically can adjust it for how that particular movement is not only being used, but also the climate that it's used in. I think that's amazing. And when we talk about, oh, that's quartz, I mean, this is not cheap quartz. They really do, you know, intend to deliver the best performing and the most utility value in a movement. So when we look at this GMT watch, this is a watch that really hit the industry by storm. Grand Seiko used their quartz movements predominantly and their kind of casual dress style watches, and to have a sports watch, let alone a GMT sports watch that not only looked attractive but was quartz driven, was kind of a big deal, and this is just in the last few years, and these really have done very well in terms of sales, and they are very approachable in terms of price as well. Now there's retail price, but just looking at secondhand price, I mean, for a few $1,000s you can pick up this watch and it's going to be so rugged, it's going to be so durable, and of course for those of you that like quartz watches, and there's some out there, you really didn't have too many options besides perhaps some offerings from brands like Breitling previously with their aerospace lineup. And so them kind of developing and seeing the niche in the market and developing, in my opinion, the best version of what that niche can really receive in terms of watch offerings, I think that is a rock star move. It shows they're dedicated to all watch collectors. Next, we have the SBGW263, which is limited to only 20 pieces, and this watch features a hand-engraved dial. Once again, rolling back into the strategy that I see Grand Seiko adopting and using today is they put in these little features in watches and they see how well it's received. And that's exactly what they did with this particular model. They hand engraved the dial, limited production. It's going to be difficult to get it. A lot of them are going to be outside of the US, probably. And what you're going to see is they're going to see how quickly they sell out. And if they sell out and they're very well received because of the engraving on the dial, I bet you they're going to incorporate dial engravings or potentially even case engravings into other watches in the future. Now, when we look at the SBGD205, this is a watch that's only limited to 10 pieces. And the interesting thing about this watch is that it is diamond set. And that means the watch has diamonds on it. There's precious stones. And that's something that Grand Seiko did a very long time ago in some of their vintage pieces, but has not done so in quite a long time for men's watches. Now, when they have a watch like this, that's really a high-end piece, something that would be competing with, a high-end piece from Patek Philippe or Piaget or one of the other brands that is willing to diamond set limited production watches. It shows that, once again, not only are they committed to the quartz buyers or those that are looking for an approachable watch that's high quality, they're also committed to the highest level of buyer as well. And I think that's incredibly smart. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they think it's going to work, right? They only produced 10 pieces. But what it does show is that they're willing to try and they're willing to do it quickly. The difference in time after announcing the hand engraved dial to the diamond set dial, the diamond set watch rather, was so small, and even since then there's been additional watch releases from Grand Seiko. So I think it perfectly exemplifies their willingness, and not only that, their ability to be quick, nimble, make little changes, see how you react as a customer, how we react as YouTubers, and then also put those features into production models in the future. The other thing that they do that I think they do so well is produce models, or models that are created to look like models that they had in the past. Now, there are vintage Grand Seiko models out there and vintage King Seiko models, and instead of Grand Seiko just producing, another vintage inspired watch with, faux lume aging and some patina and things like that, they just recreate the old models with modern movements, modern case finishing, modern case components, and making it the best watch that it can be using that classic design. And so Grand Seiko, once again, they focus on the movements and they're willing to take parts of their past, parts of their heritage, and make it the best it can be for today's watch market, whereas some other brands, dare I say Patek Philippe, are making the same watches over and over again. Sure, they change it, they update it, but they're willing to use old movements, whereas Grand Seiko is newer to the US market and other markets in the world. They're technically younger, more nimble quicker and willing to kind of be that agile and also not take themselves too seriously, but seriously enough to be considered a luxury brand. And I'm not hating on brands like Patek Philippe. I think that they don't really need to improve to have a going business. But a brand like Grand Seiko, who's trying to grow, try to scale, and also, capture the attention of us as watch collectors and YouTubers as well, I think they're doing a great job, and I think that I might be adding one in the near future. I do not have a Grand Seiko in my collection currently. I've owned some much older models in the past, but I am contemplating a couple of different interesting models that were only released to parts of Asia that have been kind of floating around offered to me. So we'll see if that happens in the near future. But what do you all think about Grand Seiko out there? Do you think that the watch brand and the models do deserve as much free media coverage as they're getting? I'll admit, they're getting a lot of free media coverage. Or do you think perhaps, the brand is not quite ripe yet for the type of coverage that it's receiving? I would love to know what you think about this as well as related topics for the future. Please leave it in the comments below. And if you like this video, please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, guys. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.